All right, News Junkies, it's February 20th, 2025, and, we've got another deep dive into those headlines that matter.
Oh, yeah, today is packed.
Some really major legal stuff, military and healthcare news coming at us.
Yeah, I think impactful is maybe even an understatement.
Okay?
Could reshape things.
All right, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
The political landscape,
All right.
global power dynamics, even everyday life.
Wow. Okay, so let's start with that court case.
All right.
This one about President Trump's executive order,
Yes.
the one on birthright citizenship.
Okay.
This feels like it's been simmering for years, this whole thing.
It has, and this ruling from the Ninth Circuit is a real curveball.
Okay.
So Trump's executive order, tries to deny birthright citizenship to kids of undocumented immigrants and anyone here on a short-term visa.
Oh, wow.
Directly challenges how we've always seen the 14th Amendment.
Okay, so I think some of us might need a refresher course.
Yeah.
What does that amendment actually say about birthright citizenship?
Well, it basically guarantees that if you're born on U.S. soil, you're a citizen.
Yeah,
It was put in place back in 1868.
a while ago.
Yeah, a while ago, the main goal was to make sure formerly enslaved people had citizenship.
Right.
But as time has passed, it's become the bedrock for anyone born in the U.S. as a citizen, no matter their parents' status.
Gotcha.
Immigration status.
So Trump basically tried to go around that
Yeah.
with this executive order.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like the Ninth Circuit wasn't really on board with that.
No, not at all. They denied the administration's request for an emergency stay.
Okay.
Meaning they sided with the lower court's decision to block this whole thing.
Okay, can you break it down for me? Like, what does it mean that the emergency stay was denied?
So a couple things first. It shows that federal court, and this was a panel of judges, even including one appointed by Trump,
Oh, wow.
they see real legal problems with the order.
Okay.
Like they're basically saying, look, you haven't shown us this is constitutional.
Right.
And the harm from enforcing it is bigger than any good it might do.
Wow.
Second, it sets the stage for a showdown at the Supreme Court. The Trump administration is almost definitely going to appeal this.
Yeah.
And that could have huge effects on what birthright citizenship even means in the U.S.
So we could be looking at a major case, right?
Absolutely.
Something that could really change how we see citizenship.
Oh, yeah. And here's where it gets interesting. The Supreme Court, with how many conservative judges there are now,
Right.
they might very well take this case.
Okay.
And depending on their ruling, it could either really cement the traditional view of the 14th Amendment or open the door to a much stricter idea of birthright citizenship.
Yeah.
Huge implications.
Huge. Okay. Wow. This is a lot to take in.
Yeah.
I mean, on one side, you have people saying birthright citizenship is a basic right. It's in the Constitution. Changing it would mess with a core part of American democracy.
Right.
Then on the other side, you have people who see it as a loophole,
Yeah.
something that needs to be closed to stop illegal immigration, to keep the country safe, national security.
Yeah.
So it's complex.
It is a complex issue, and both sides have points.
Right.
And the Supreme Court, if they take this on, they'll have to weigh all of that.
Right.
Think about the historical precedents and legal arguments and what it could mean for society.
This is definitely one to watch.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Talk about the Pentagon.
Okay.
They're getting ready for some serious budget cuts. Billions of dollars, right?
$50 billion to be exact.
Wow.
That's about 8% of their whole budget.
That's a lot.
A massive reduction.
Yeah.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, he's ordered the Pentagon to find a way to cut that much from the 2026 budget.
Wow. And, I mean, no surprise this is tied to President Trump's priorities.
Right.
He's been pretty vocal about moving funds towards things like the border wall and that Iron Dome missile defense system.
Yeah, and let's not forget about cutting what he calls
Oh, yeah.
radical and wasteful government DEI programs and preferencing.
Right.
He sees those as taking away from the main goals of the military.
Now, I remember back in 2013 during the sequestration,
Yeah.
the military had to make similar big cuts, and it was a big deal.
Yeah.
Caused a lot of issues.
Yeah.
What kind of impact are these new cuts likely to have on the Pentagon?
On their readiness overall.
Yeah.
To put it simply, it's a gamble.
Okay.
Some analysts think such big cuts could really weaken what our military can do.
Right.
Maybe even put us at a disadvantage globally.
Oh, wow. So are we going to see a repeat of what happened in 2013?
It's possible back then they had to cut billions so fast.
Right.
It led to a whole bunch of bad stuff.
Yeah.
They had to cut back on training. They couldn't do as much maintenance. Troop deployments were delayed.
Oh, wow.
There were even more accidents because equipment was failing.
Oh, no.
So yeah, if history tells us anything,
Right.
these cuts could really affect how our military works day to day and their readiness in the long run.
So what areas are going to be hit the hardest?
Well, some reports are saying we might see fewer military commands in both Europe and the Middle East.
Oh, wow.
This would be a huge shift in our global presence, you know?
Yeah.
It might mean we're stepping back from our usual commitments.
Right.
Our allies are going to be worried.
I bet. What about people?
Yeah.
Are we going to see troop reductions or cuts to training?
It's definitely a possibility.
Okay.
Some experts think cuts this big could mean getting rid of entire units and scaling back training,
Wow.
and that could affect morale and recruitment,
Oh, yeah, of course.
make it harder to get good people to join and stay.
That sounds like a recipe for disaster, honestly.
It's definitely a worry, and it's going to cause a lot of tension between the Pentagon and Congress.
Yeah, I bet.
The Democrats are already speaking out against it.
Yeah,
They're saying it'll really hurt our troops' readiness and national security.
right.
This is going to be a budget battle, for sure.
Oh, yeah, okay, so we talked about birthright citizenship,
Yeah.
Pentagon budget cuts, two pretty heavy topics. But we got to talk about a story that's really close to home, especially here in New York.
Okay.
It's about the World Trade Center Health Program,
Right.
the one that provides health care to the 9/11 first responders
Yeah.
and survivors, and it's facing some terrible cuts.
This program helps over 132,000 people
Wow.
dealing with all sorts of health problems from 9/11.
Yeah,
From breathing problems to cancer.
it's a lifeline for so many who were there that day.
Yeah.
And now, because of the Trump administration's budget cuts,
Yeah.
we're seeing at least 16 staff members let go.
Yeah.
A 20% cut in staff overall through buyouts.
It just feels wrong to cut a program that helps people who did so much for our country.
Yeah, I can only imagine how scary and uncertain this is for those first responders.
Yeah.
And survivors who need this program, what are people saying about how these cuts will impact things?
Well, they're worried that certifying treatments for serious things like cancer will be delayed.
Oh, no.
And that could mean people suffer longer and lives could be at risk.
Oh, wow.
The backlog of healthcare petitions will probably grow too,
Right.
leaving people in limbo waiting for the care they desperately need.
And fewer staff to handle it all.
Yeah.
Wait times are definitely going to increase for appointments and everything.
Yeah.
This is just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what's the justification for this?
What are they saying?
What's the Trump administration saying about why they're cutting a program that provides such important care to our 9/11 heroes?
Well, they say these cuts are part of their plan to reduce federal spending overall
Okay.
and to streamline government programs.
Okay.
They say they get how important the program is,
Right.
but they think they can make it more efficient without hurting the quality of care.
So it's about finding that balance
Yeah.
between saving money and making sure people who serve our country on 9/11 are taken care of.
Exactly, and it's a tough balance to find.
Yeah, this debate over the cuts is going to get more intense in the coming weeks.
Oh, for sure.
As lawmakers try to figure out what's the right thing to do morally and how it all fits into the budget,
Yeah,
we'll definitely be keeping a close eye on this story and updating you on anything new that happens.
for sure.
Wow, this has been a lot of news already. We've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah. It's kind of wild how these stories we've talked about,
Mm-hmm.
birthright citizenship, the Pentagon budget cuts, that World Trade Center health program, they all connect in a way.
Yeah, they really do.
They all make us think about American values, like who are we as a nation and who do we want to be?
I see what you mean.
It's about our responsibility to different groups.
Right.
To future generations, to people in the military, to those who sacrifice their health for the country.
Exactly. They make us face some tough choices
Yeah,
about how we spend our money, what's important to us, and how to balance things in such a messy world.
exactly.
Let's dig a little deeper into that legal battle over birthright citizenship.
Okay.
I'm still wrapping my head around what could happen
Yeah.
if this ends up at the Supreme Court.
Well, imagine if the Supreme Court decides to change how we see the 14th Amendment,
Okay.
narrowing down birthright citizenship.
Yeah.
The effects of that could go way beyond just immigration.
Okay, I'm listening. Walk me through it.
Think about it. It could impact voting rights, access to social services even.
Oh, wow.
It could create a whole group of people born in the U.S. but not citizens,
Yeah.
stuck in this weird legal limbo.
That's a scary thought.
Yeah, it shows how much power the Supreme Court has.
Right.
They can shape not just the law, but our whole society.
Yeah, it really highlights that back and forth
It does.
between those who want a broader interpretation of the Constitution, one that's more inclusive,
Right.
and those who want a stricter view, focused on the original meaning and national sovereignty.
It's a debate we've been having since the country started, and it's not going away.
No, it's not. Okay, let's go back to the Pentagon budget cuts for a second.
Okay.
We talked about the risks to military readiness.
Right.
But there's something else here.
Okay.
I think we need to explore it a bit more.
You're thinking about priorities, right?
Yeah,
Where we choose to put our resources as a nation.
exactly. What message does it send to the world when we cut funding for programs that support our troops in diplomacy?
Right.
But then at the same time, spend billions on the border wall and maybe even more military action overseas?
It raises some tough questions about what kind of country we want to be.
Right.
What role do we see for ourselves in the world? Are we choosing military over talking things out,
Yeah,
choosing to stay out of things instead of engaging globally?
right.
Are we stepping back as a world leader or just changing what that means based on new priorities?
It's complicated,
It
and
is.
I'm sure there will be a lot of debate about it in Congress and everywhere
Oh,
else.
yeah, for sure.
Okay, before we wrap up, I want to go back to the World Trade Center Health Program.
Okay.
This one's close to my heart, and I know it is for a lot of our listeners.
Yeah.
The cuts to this program are just awful,
They are.
and they really make you think about what we stand for as a country.
It reminds us that budget decisions aren't just about numbers.
Right.
They have real human consequences.
Yeah.
And in this case, those consequences could be devastating for those who are still living with 9/11.
These are the men and women who ran into burning buildings, breathed in all that toxic dust, risked their lives to save others.
And now, years later, they're facing another battle.
Right.
A battle for their health, to keep their jobs, for the help they need to cope with what happened that day.
It's like we're breaking a promise.
It is.
We said we'd stand by them, take care of them, honor their sacrifice. But now we're cutting funding for a program they need to be okay.
Yeah, in my view, it's a moral stain on our country.
I agree. It makes you question what it means to be a patriot,
It does.
to support our troops, to take care of those who have been on the front lines of our nation's struggles.
It makes us look at the difference between what we say and what we do. We praise our heroes, we build monuments, we say we're thankful.
Right.
But when it comes to actually helping them heal, giving them the resources they need, we fall short.
It's a tough look for our nation, and it's a thing we should all think about seriously.
We should.
So as we finish up this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to ask, what can we as informed citizens do to face these challenges, to hold our leaders accountable, to make sure our country lives up to its ideals?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is.
And it's one I think we'll keep talking about in the last part of our discussion.
And we're back for this final part of our deep dive into the biggest news today.
Yeah.
We've covered so much already.
We have.
Those legal battles over birthright citizenship, the budget fights, and the cuts to the World Trade Center Health Program.
It's a lot.
It is, and like we've been saying, these stories, they're all connected in a way.
They all point to these big challenges, maybe even contradictions,
Yeah.
that our country's facing right now: immigration, national security, and our duty to the people who've sacrificed so much for us.
It feels like we're at this point where we have to make tough choices
Yeah, a crossroads for sure.
about who we are as a nation, what our real values are.
I agree. These news stories are making us face those questions head on.
Let's start with the birthright citizenship case.
Okay.
The potential outcomes of this going to the Supreme Court, they could reach way beyond immigration policy.
Absolutely. If they reinterpret the 14th Amendment
Yeah.
and make birthright citizenship narrower, it could set a precedent that affects tons of other rights and freedoms.
You're talking about things like voting rights, access to education, even due process.
Exactly. It could create a system where some people have all the rights and others are treated as second-class citizens.
That's a scary thought.
It is.
It makes you realize how easily our rights could be taken away and how crucial it is to protect them.
It reminds us that the Constitution is a living thing. It changes with interpretation over time. And those interpretations can have a massive impact on millions of people.
Okay, let's switch back to the Pentagon budget cuts for a minute.
All right.
I keep thinking about this idea of priorities.
Yeah.
It feels contradictory, cutting back our military overseas while putting so much into border security.
It is a bit of a paradox, isn't it? On one hand, we're maybe stepping back from our global role a little,
Yeah.
scaling back on being a superpower.
But then on the other hand,
We're building up our borders maybe out of fear or a need to protect ourselves.
it seems like we're trying to figure out where we fit in the world,
Right.
how to be involved in global issues while also focusing on what's happening here at home.
And that struggle shows up in our budget, how we choose to spend our money.
Yeah.
Are we putting military strength above diplomacy? Are we choosing to isolate ourselves instead of working with other countries?
Big questions.
These are questions we need to answer as a nation.
And then there's the World Trade Center Health Program. Those cuts, they're not just about money.
No, they're about doing what's right for those who put everything on the line for us on 9/11.
It's about having compassion, understanding what they went through, and honoring their sacrifices.
It's about recognizing that their health isn't just their problem. It's something we all share as a country.
We're failing them. We're turning away from people who did their duty, who ran into danger without a second thought.
It's a terrible situation, and it makes you think about who we are as a nation.
Yeah.
Do we really care for our heroes? Do we keep our promises, or are we willing to let them suffer to save some money?
Tough questions we need to ask ourselves, both personal and as a country.
We do.
So as we wrap up our deep dive today, I want to ask our listeners, what are your thoughts on all this?
Yeah.
What are your hopes and fears for the future of our country?
And maybe even more importantly, what can we do as citizens to change things?
Right, to make sure the leaders are doing the right thing and to build the future we want.
It all starts with us.
It does change, it doesn't happen overnight.
It doesn't.
But it starts with each one of us staying informed, having these conversations, holding our leaders accountable, and demanding that our nation lives up to its ideals.
Don't let apathy win. Don't let cynicism take over.
Yeah.
Your voice matters. Your actions matter. Get involved. Make a difference. And let's build a future together that's worthy of the sacrifices made for us.
Thanks for listening to the Videntis podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
We'll be back tomorrow with more in-depth analysis of the news that matters. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.